Katie wouldn't hold still. I had her sneaker in one hand, the lace looped in the other, kneeling on the laminate with my knees complaining about it already. 6:30 in the morning, and the kitchen smelled like burnt toast and coffee going cold in Ruth's mug on the counter.
Daddy, stop.
She pulled her foot back.
I can do it.
You've got 2 minutes before the bus.
I know how.
She dropped down, cross-legged, right there on the floor and took the lace out of my hand like she was rescuing it from me. I watched her cross the loops the wrong way, under instead of over. Some backward double knot she must have picked up from a cousin or a video. 2 loops crossed into each other like rabbit ears tangled at the root. It wasn't how I'd taught her.
There,
she said, and cinched it tight and sat back proud of herself. I reached down to check it, just a habit, my thumb pressing the bow to make sure it would hold through recess and gym and whatever else a 6-year-old does to a shoe in a day. And then I was somewhere else. Boards under my bare feet, warm enough to sting a little, gray wood gone soft and splintered at the edges. Water smell, green and thick. Somewhere behind me, a screen door slapped twice against its frame. That particular hollow bang-bang I would have sworn I'd never heard before in my life, except that I knew exactly what it sounded like a half-second before it happened. No, cross it under, dummy. A girl's voice. Close to me, right at my knee. I looked down and she was kneeling there, working my shoelace with quick, certain fingers. A gap in her front teeth, hair gone stiff and pale from sun and lake water, knees scabbed up like she fell on purpose for fun. She didn't look up. She just kept crossing the loops under, showing me, like she'd shown me 100 times already, and would show me 100 more. I knew her name. I knew it the way I know my own hands. Martha Finley, my sister. I don't know how long I was gone. Long enough that when the floor came back, the cold laminate, the smell of burnt toast, my hand was still on Katie's shoe, my thumb still pressed flat against the bow, and my mouth had lake water in it that wasn't there.
Rowan.
Ruth was standing in the doorway to the hall, coffee mug in her hand, not moving toward me yet.
Why did you go still like that?
I didn't answer right away. I was still down on one knee on the floor, and Katie was looking at me with her head tilted the way she does when something's off, but she can't name it.
I tied it myself, Daddy,
she said, like that was the thing that needed clearing up. I saw. My voice came out flat, rough, not quite mine. I saw you did. Ruth crossed the kitchen and crouched next to me, put a hand on my shoulder.
You were gone for like 10 seconds. Your eyes were open. You didn't blink.
I know.
Was it another one of your...
She didn't finish it. She never liked the word for it any more than I did. Yeah. I got up off the floor slow, like my knees had aged 5 years kneeling there. Another one. Katie had already lost interest and gone to grab her backpack off the chair, humming something under her breath, some tune I didn't catch. Ruth stayed close, watching my face.
What did you see?
I almost didn't say it. Saying it made it a thing I'd have to defend, and I already knew I couldn't. A girl, I said. On a dock, tying my shoe. I looked at Ruth and made myself say the rest of it before I could talk myself out of it. I had a sister. Her name was Martha. Ruth's face did the thing it does when she's deciding how gently to correct me.
Rowan, you're an only child. Your mom said that 100 times.
I know what she said.
So where'd Martha come from?
I didn't have an answer that would hold up under looking at it straight. I only had the boards under my feet and the taste of the lake and the certainty, complete and stupid and unshakable, that I had a sister and her name was Martha Finley. I don't know, I said. I just know it's true. Ruth watched me a second longer, then let it go. She kissed the top of Katie's head, grabbed her keys off the hook, told her to hurry up or she'd miss the bus. Katie hollered back that she was hurrying, and the front door opened and closed, and then it was quiet. The two of them gone down the driveway, the bus groaning somewhere at the end of the block. I stood in the kitchen with my thumb still remembering the shape of that bow, the crossed loops under instead of over, and I thought about a name that had never once been said in this house before this morning, and I could not for the life of me explain how I knew it. The house went quiet fast once they were both gone. I stood in the kitchen a while after the bus pulled off, just listening to the fridge hum, and then I picked up the phone. Mom answered on the third ring, the way she always did, like she'd been standing right next to it waiting.
Rowan, this early?
I need to ask you something.
All right.
Did I have a sister, Martha? Silence on the line first. Not confused. Bracing.
There was never a Martha,
She said, flat, fast, like she'd had the words ready a long time.
No bunk bed. No yellow room. Stop.
Mom, I remember a doc. I remember...
Stop, please, before you say it.
I just want to know if... She hung up. I stood there holding the phone a second, listening to the dial tone, and then I put it back on the wall and didn't call again. Not that morning. I went through the day doing the things a person does. Ran the shop's ordering sheet, picked up milk, waited for the bus to bring Katie back, watched her run up the driveway with her backpack half open, one strap dragging. Ate dinner across from Ruth without telling her I'd called Mom. But that night, once the house had gone still and Ruth was asleep and Katie's door was shut with a little nightlight glowing under it, I sat down at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen, and I wrote it all down. Yellow room, 2 bunks, mine on the bottom, a water stain on the ceiling shaped like a dog, one ear folded over, like it'd take a lick to smooth it back. Martha's cassette player on the shelf between the beds, tape hiss under a song that warbled every time the batteries ran low, some pop thing with a chorus I could still hum but couldn't name, coppertone and mildew, the 2 smells stacked on top of each other so tight I couldn't separate them even now. None of that fit a bedroom in a split level. I knew the split level. I'd lived there. Mom had told me I'd lived there since I could remember. The beige carpet, the one bathroom we all shared, the window unit in the summer that dripped onto the sill. That house had never had a yellow room in it. It didn't have bunks. It had my bed against the wall and a poster of a car I never owned. I tried to pin the lake house to a year. I sat there with the pen tapping the pad and worked backward. What grade would I have been in? What teacher? What age? And every time I nailed something down, it slid. If I was 7 at the lake, then I should have still been at the elementary school Mom always named. But the elementary school Mom named didn't line up with what I remembered about that summer. The length of it. The light. If I pushed it to 9, the math on the split level didn't work either. Because by 9, we were already supposed to have been living there 3 years running. The harder I pushed the dates, the softer the split level got. I'd sit there positive of the address a minute ago, and then find myself unsure if the porch had 2 steps or 3. Unsure which way the driveway curved. Things I'd known my whole life going loose in my hands like wet rope. I called her again anyway. I don't know why. Maybe to hear if she'd say it different the second time. "Martha," I said, when she picked up. Just the name. I didn't have anything else ready. She didn't ask what I meant. She recited it back at me like a woman reading off a card. The address of the split level, number, and street said whole and even. The name of the grade school. Both of them out loud, steady, rehearsed enough that it didn't sound like an answer so much as a wall going up brick by brick in front of me. Then she hung up again. I sat there with the receiver in my hand a second time that day, and something in me settled that hadn't settled the first time. She wasn't going to give me anything. Every time I asked, she'd just build the official version higher, address and school name stacked on top of each other, and every time I tried to fit the lake house inside that version, the version itself started to shake. I looked down at the pad. Yellow room, dog-shaped stain, cassette player, coppertone and mildew, a lake house that didn't belong anywhere in the childhood I'd been handed. If I couldn't get the truth out of her mouth, I'd have to find it somewhere that couldn't lie back at me. A photograph, a record, something with Martha's name already printed on it before anybody had the chance to take it back. I closed the notebook on the table and sat there a minute in the quiet, deciding that was exactly what I'd do next. The bench saw was running when it happened again. I had a length of oak clamped down, my hand on the fence, and the blade was singing through the wood the way it does when the angle's right. And then the shop noise dropped away, and there was water instead. Lick water, warm on top and cold underneath, and small hands under my stomach holding me up. "Kick your feet, Rowan. Don't stop kicking." I knew the voice, Martha's voice. Her hands were flat and sure under my ribs, and I could feel the dock behind us, the warped boards, the shadow of it falling across the water like a ladder laid down flat. Then the saw was screaming against nothing and a kid in the front row was yelling my name. "Mr. Finley." I killed the switch, The blade wound down slow, that long, dying whine, and I looked at my hand still flat on the fence an inch from where the oak had been, and the oak was on the floor, kicked clean off the table without me touching it.
You okay?
The kid asked. 16 years old, wide-eyed, like he'd just watched his shop teacher forget which planet he was on. I'm fine, I said. Lost my place. I picked the board up off the floor and set it back on the table and didn't run the saw again for the rest of the period. That night, I got a different version of the same day. I was half asleep on the couch, Ruth already upstairs, the television throwing blue light on the wall, and I felt a hand close around my wrist, hard, yanking. Come on, get away from the water. Martha again, but not teaching me anything this time. Pulling me back from the edge of the dock, her face turned towards something behind us I couldn't see. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Don't let them see you counting. I didn't know what that meant. I still don't. But I woke up gripping my own wrist so hard I'd left 4 little half moons in the skin, and Ruth found me like that in the morning and didn't say anything, just looked at the marks and then looked at me. The porch came a few nights after that. It wasn't a full memory. It never is. Just pieces, arriving out of order like a radio catching a station between 2 others. Night air. Bug light humming somewhere close. Ice in a glass. A man's voice, low, one I couldn't put a face to no matter how many times it played. Which one's the quiet one? And my mother's voice, answering flat and fast, the same way she answers everything now. The quiet one stays. I sat up in bed the night that one came and said it out loud to the dark room. The quiet one stays, like there'd been a choosing. There was another piece that never came with a face attached to it at all. Just a whisper, low, almost affectionate, the kind of voice you'd use telling a kid to eat their vegetables. You take the smaller half. I didn't know who said it. I didn't know who it was said to. It floated in on its own, unattached, and sat there in my head next to the porch and the dock and Martha's hands under my ribs, and none of it fit together into one story. It was like somebody had torn a photograph into 4 pieces and mailed them to me one at a time, out of order, missing corners. I decided I needed somebody who'd actually been there. Hannah picked up on the second ring, my cousin, 3 years older than me, the one who used to show up every summer with a duffel bag and leave 4 shades darker than she came. Rowan, everything okay? I need to ask you about the lake. There was a pause on the line just long enough that I noticed it. What lake? You know what lake. The one we all went to when we were kids. You, me, Martha. Another pause, longer. The lake was where everything changed, she said finally, quiet, like she was choosing the words off a shelf she didn't like reaching for. Changed how? Your mom came back different that summer. I don't know how else to say it. Different how, Hannah? She didn't answer that one straight. She came back with him, she said. I felt my stomach go tight. With who? I don't... She stopped herself. Don't ask me that. Please. Hannah, I need you to explain what that means. I have to go, she said. I've got somewhere to be. Hannah... The line clicked dead before I got another word out. I stood there in the kitchen with the phone still against my ear, the dial tone humming flat and even, and I turned the sentence over and over like a stone I couldn't get a grip on. She came back with him. Him. Some man with no face, no name, standing behind every fragment I'd pulled up so far. The porch, the whisper, the smaller half. And I had no idea, none at all, who he was supposed to be. Mom went to her sister's for the day, some errand about a doctor's appointment, and she called to tell me not to bother stopping by. That was the opening I needed. I told her I might swing by anyway, to check the gutters before the rain came in, and she said fine, and hung up before I could say anything else. The attic ladder still creaked the same way it always had, one long groan, and then a bark near the top. I climbed up with a flashlight and my knees complaining and started going through boxes. There were Christmases in there. Report cards with my name on them, gap-toothed school photos, a shoebox of ticket stubs from movies I didn't remember seeing. There was nothing with the name Martha on it. Not a photograph, not a birthday card, not a hospital bracelet, nothing. I went through every box twice, checked the seams where a picture might have slid down behind the cardboard, Checked an old suitcase full of baby clothes folded so careful they still held their creases. Nothing. That was the thing that got to me, more than if I'd found something wrong. You don't lose every photograph of somebody by chance. Not every single one. Not across 20-some years and 2 moves. Somebody had gone through and taken her out, box by box, the same way you'd sand a name off a gravestone. I climbed back down with dust on my knees and nothing in my hands. The county office didn't have much of a wait. I gave them what I had. Sable Pond, a cottage number I only half remembered, and a year I'd worked backward to from the light in the memory. From how old I looked in the reflection I couldn't actually see but somehow knew. July of 1997, the month I turned 7. The clerk came back with a rental agreement for Cottage 14, near Houghton Lake, Michigan, signed under my mother's maiden name. I sat in the car in the parking lot and read it 3 times. It was real. The dock was real. The water was real. The porch with the bug light humming was a real porch somewhere with a real address on a real form that a real person had signed her real name to. I hadn't invented any of it. Whatever else was missing, whatever the attic had swallowed, this one thing had a paper trail, and paper doesn't lie back at you the way a person can. I went home and dug out the box of Mom's old files I'd taken from her house years ago, back when she moved and told me to just get rid of whatever I didn't want. I'd never gotten rid of any of it. It sat in my office closet, insurance paperwork and old tax returns and a folder of nothing anybody would ever need again. I went through it at my desk with a lamp on, because it was getting dark by then, and I hadn't noticed. Most of it was exactly as dull as it looked. Utility bills, a car title, and then, near the bottom, a receipt, thin and yellowed, for a storage unit in Lansing. The name on it wasn't Finley. D. Jacobs. I sat there a long time looking at that. I ran it through my head against every name I had, aunts, cousins, my dad's side, anybody who might have married into something with a J. Nothing fit. Nobody I'd ever heard of in my whole life went by Jacobs. Which one's the quiet one? The quiet one stays. You take the smaller half. None of it had a face. None of it had ever had a name attached, not once, in all these weeks of it surfacing in pieces. And here was a name, right here, printed on a receipt in my mother's old files, tucked in with a car title like it was nothing. I got a legal pad and copied the address off the receipt, careful, like it might smudge if I wrote it too fast. Lansing, a unit number, D. Jacobs. It was the first thing I had that wasn't a flash of water or a voice I couldn't place. It was an address, something with a door on it. The address on the receipt led to a place on the south side of Lansing, a low block of orange doors and gravel that hadn't been raked in years. I drove there on a Thursday, told Ruth I had a supplier meeting, and I felt bad about the lie the whole way, but not bad enough to turn around. The office kid barely looked up from his phone. I gave him the unit number off the receipt and the name D. Jacobs, and he ran his finger down a clipboard and said the account was still active, paid up through some auto pay nobody had bothered to cancel in 20-some years. He didn't ask who I was. He just buzzed the gate. Unit 41. I stood in front of the door a minute before I lifted it. It came up loud, metal on metal, and dust rolled out at me in a sheet. The bed frame was leaned against the back wall in pieces, headboard and rails and a footboard, and I knew it at once. Yellow. Not bright yellow, not fresh. The paint had gone dull and chalky with age, chipped along one edge where somebody's foot had probably kicked it 1,000 times climbing up. I ran my hand along the headboard and felt the grooves in the wood, little gouges near the top rail, deep enough to be letters, sanded down too rough to read anymore. I sat on an overturned crate for a second and just looked at it. It matched. Not close. Not similar. It matched. Under the bed frame, pushed back into the shadow where the light from the door didn't quite reach, there was a shoebox. I pulled it out and set it on my knees and lifted the lid, and it was photographs. A couple hundred of them loose and curling, some in paper sleeves from a drugstore that didn't exist anymore. I went through them one at a time. A woman on a porch, younger than I'd ever seen my mother, laughing at something off camera. A man I didn't recognize, sunburned, holding a fish up by the gill. A dock. The same dock, in 3 or 4 different shots, gray boards, its shadow stretched long and narrow across the water. And in every single one that had a child in it, the face was gone. Not torn out. Scratched. Somebody had taken something sharp, a key maybe, or a fingernail worked at long enough, and gone at the same small oval over and over until there was nothing left but a scrape of white paper and a hole where a face should have been. Some of them so hard the scratching had gone clean through to the picture behind it in the stack. I held one up to the light from the door. A kid on the dock, gap-toothed grin cut away to nothing, tangled hair the only thing left to say it had ever been a person at all. There was no way to tell from what was left whether it was a boy or a girl. I went through the whole box twice, and every child in every photograph had the same wound. It wasn't an accident, and it wasn't a kid with scissors bored on a rainy day. It had taken a long time, and whoever did it hadn't stopped until it was done. I set the box down and kept looking, and that's when I found the camcorder, wedged sideways under the frame's footboard, an old boxy thing with a leather strap gone stiff and cracked. Next to it, in a smaller box that had once held reams of paper, there were tapes. 6 of them. 7. Plastic cases yellowed the same as everything else in that unit. I turned them over one by one, reading whatever was left of the labels in ballpoint gone faint and blue-gray. One of them still read clear enough to make out. July 1997. I stood there holding it a long time, standing in a storage unit that smelled like mildew and cold concrete, with a scratched-out child staring up at me from a shoebox at my feet. I didn't open the case. I didn't want to see what was inside it yet, not standing in a gravel lot in Lansing with a stranger buzzing me in and out through a gate. I put the tape in my jacket pocket, picked up the camcorder, and left the bed frame and the photographs where they were. I pulled the door down and it banged shut the same way it had opened, loud, final. The drive home I kept glancing at the camcorder on the passenger seat like it might do something. I decided I wasn't watching that tape with Ruth in the next room, and Katie's door cracked open down the hall. Whatever was on it, I wanted to watch it alone, late, after the house had gone quiet. I carried the camcorder and the tape in from the car myself, both hands full, careful the way you'd carry something that might still be alive. Ruth's light went off around 11. I gave it another 20 minutes, sitting on the edge of the couch listening to the house settle, the furnace kick on and off, before I went and checked Katie's door was still cracked the way she likes it. Then I came back down and set the camcorder on the coffee table and plugged it into the television with a cable I had to dig out of a drawer full of dead chargers. My hands weren't steady doing it. I was kneeling there behind the television, fitting the yellow plug into the yellow jack. I turned the volume down to almost nothing before I hit play. 2 clicks past mute. The screen went blue, then gray, then resolved into grass. It was Mom's voice first, younger than I'd ever heard it, laughing at something behind the lens wobbling in her hand. The picture swung wide and caught a stretch of yard I knew. The cottage siding gone soft and green-gray with lake damp, a clothesline strung between 2 trees with nothing on it. A boombox sat on the porch step, and it was playing that song. The one with the warble in it. The batteries running low even then. The chorus dragging half a beat behind itself like it was tired. I hadn't heard it outside my own head in 20-some years, and here it was, coming out of my own television, thin and warbly and exactly right. I sat forward. A girl ran through the frame first, quick, laughing, gap in her front teeth, hair gone pale and stiff from the sun. Martha. Exactly like I remembered her. Not close. Exactly. Then a boy ran through after her, chasing her, arms out like he was going to grab her around the waist, and he was wearing my shirt. I know that shirt. Striped, red and white, a button missing at the collar that never got fixed. I know the sneakers, too. Red high tops with the left lace always coming undone because the eyelet on that side was stripped. I leaned in so close to the screen my breath fogged a little patch of it. The boy's face was rounder than mine. A cowlick stood up off his forehead that I have never had in my life, not as a kid, not now. And above his lip, small, pale, there was a scar. I don't have a scar there. I sat back on my heels and looked at that boy running across the grass in my clothes with somebody else's face, and something in my chest went very quiet and very cold. I rewound it. My thumb found the button without me telling it to. The girl ran through. Martha. Then the boy in my shirt, my sneakers, chasing her, laughing at something the tape hadn't caught the sound of. I froze it right as his face turned toward the camera. and I sat there staring at it in the dark living room with the television throwing that deadwater light across the coffee table. Round her face, cowlick, scar. Not me. I let it play on. The camera swung, unsteady, following them toward the dock, and then it swung back toward the house, and I heard my mother's voice again, off to the side, calling out toward the yard. "Harold, Rowan, come inside." I sat very still. 2 names, 2 boys, and one of them was mine. I rewound it again and played that part 3 more times, turning the volume up a hair each time, my ear almost against the speaker. Some small, stupid part of me thought maybe I'd misheard it. Maybe it was just Rowan twice, my mother calling my own name into the wind and catching an echo off the water. It wasn't an echo. Harold, Rowan, come inside. 2 names, 1 boy running toward the house in my shirt with a face I have never once seen in a mirror. The frame stayed frozen on his face for a long stretch before I heard the stairs creak. I hit stop so fast the remote nearly went off the edge of the coffee table. The screen snapped to blue and then to black, and I sat there breathing like I'd been running, listening for Ruth's footsteps to keep going or stop. They stopped at the bottom of the stairs.
"Rowan."
"Couldn't sleep," I said. My voice came out almost normal. "Watching something dumb. Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." A pause. Long enough I thought she was going to come in and look.
"Turn it off soon,"
she said, and I heard her go back up. I sat there another minute with my heart going too fast, and then I unplugged the cable from the television with hands that still weren't steady, and I pressed eject. The tape slid out slow, the little motor whining under it, and I held it there in the dark room and looked at nothing, because there wasn't anything left on a screen to look at anymore, just the shape of what I'd already seen sitting behind my eyes. A boy in my clothes, not my face. I wrapped the tape in an old dish towel from the kitchen and put it in the bottom of my tackle box, under the lures, where Ruth never looks and never would. Then I sat back down on the couch in the dark and stared at the blank television like the boy was still there, frozen, wearing my shirt, wearing my shoes, wearing none of my face at all. I put the tackle box back on the shelf in the garage and told myself I was done looking at it for a while. 3 days went by where nothing happened. I almost let myself believe that was the end of it. Then Tuesday morning, Katie was at the table with her cereal going soft in the bowl, swinging her feet under the chair, humming. I knew the tune before I placed it. My hand went cold around my coffee mug. Katie. She kept humming. That warble in it, the drag on the chorus, exactly the way it dragged on the tape. "Katie, where'd you learn that song?" She looked up at me like it was a strange thing to ask.
"My other daddy sang it,"
she said, and went back to her cereal. I set the mug down careful, like it might crack if I didn't. Ruth was at the counter with her back to us packing a lunch, and she didn't turn around, so I didn't say anything else right then. I just watched Katie swing her feet and hum that dying half beat, and felt something in my chest go the same cold as the mug had been. That afternoon, she brought me a drawing off the kitchen table, holding it out with both hands the way she does when she's proud of something.
"That's my other daddy,"
she said. I took it from her slow. Crayon, round face, a swirl of brown scribbled up off the forehead where a cowlick would sit. A little line above the mouth, careful, deliberate, like she'd pressed extra hard to get it right. A scar. I sat down at the table because my legs asked me to. "Katie," my voice came out low. "Who told you what he looks like?"
"Nobody told me."
She said it like I'd asked something dumb.
"I just know."
At dinner that night, she was working a chicken finger around her plate, not eating it, just pushing it through the ketchup, and she looked up at me across the table with no more weight in her voice than if she'd asked for more milk.
"Which one are you?"
I didn't answer fast enough.
"The quiet one stays,"
she said, and put the chicken finger in her mouth like she hadn't said anything at all. Ruth's fork stopped halfway to her mouth.
"What did you just say to your dad?"
Katie shrugged.
"I don't know. It's just a thing I know."
Ruth looked at me across the table, and I looked back at her, and neither one of us said anything until Katie asked to be excused and Ruth told her go on, and we listened to her feet on the stairs going up.
"Rowan."
Ruth's voice had an edge under it now.
"What have you been telling her?"
"Nothing. I haven't told her anything."
She just said the exact thing you told me you heard on a porch that doesn't exist, word for word.
I know.
So where did she get it?
I got up and went to the office and came back with the tape in its towel and the drawing in my other hand, and I set both down in front of her on the table between the plates. "Watch it," I said. "Then look at that drawing." She didn't want to. I could see that in her face, the same way I hadn't wanted to watch it myself the first time. But she took the tape and turned the drawing toward the lamp and studied the cowlick, the scar, the round shape of the jaw that wasn't mine.
"This doesn't mean anything,"
she said, but her voice had gone quiet saying it. She's never seen that tape. She was asleep both times I watched it. I never played that song around her, not once. Ruth didn't have an answer for that. She just sat there looking at the crayon scar over the crayon mouth like it might explain itself if she looked long enough. Katie's bath ran that night the same as any night. Water thumping the tub, her singing something to herself. I made myself not listen too hard to. Ruth went up to get her out and I stayed downstairs, and I heard the water drain, and I heard Ruth's voice go quiet and strange through the floor.
"Rowan, come up here."
I went up 2 steps at a time. The bathroom mirror had fogged the way it always does after a bath that hot, and pressed into the fog, off to the side, up near the top edge of the glass. There was a handprint. Small. A child's hand. Fingers spread. Too high. Katie couldn't reach that high standing flat-footed, and there was nothing pulled over that could have put a hand anywhere near that height. Katie was already wrapped in her towel on the bath mat, humming that same warble under her breath, not looking at the mirror at all, like it wasn't there. I looked at the yellow step stool sitting by the sink, the plastic gone a little dull with age. Yellow. That exact, chalky, dulled-down yellow. My feet wouldn't carry me past the doorway.
"Rowan, it's a step stool,"
Ruth said, watching my face.
"It's Katie's step stool. She's had it since she was 2.
I didn't answer. I couldn't make myself explain that the color of a piece of plastic had no business scaring a grown man, because I didn't believe that either. I just stood in the hall with one hand on the frame and looked past Ruth at that stool like it had a job to do in this house I hadn't given it.
"Fine,"
Ruth said when I didn't move.
"Fine. I'll get rid of it. Look."
She bent down and picked it up by the handle, and moving it didn't fix a single thing. Not the fog on the mirror, not the handprint drying into nothing above it, not the song still coming soft and warbled out of my daughter's mouth while she sat wrapped in her towel like none of it had ever touched her at all. Ruth carried the yellow step stool out of the bathroom, and I stood frozen in the hall, watching her go. The message came in on a Wednesday afternoon, while I was still ringing up a return at the shop counter. Unknown number, no name attached, just a string of words that made my hands go still on the register. I know about the tape. We should settle whose life this is. I read it twice, then a third time, checking for the joke in it, some prank Ruth might have set up, some coworker's idea of funny. There wasn't one. Whoever sent it knew a word I hadn't said out loud to anybody but Ruth and my mother, and a shoebox full of scratched-out faces in a storage unit outside Lansing. I typed back one line. "Who is this?" The answer came fast. "Harold Jacobs. You have my life." I stood there behind the counter with a customer waiting for change and didn't move for a second too long. We went back and forth a few more times, short and careful on both ends, like 2 men circling a hole in the ice to see who'd fall through first. He wanted to meet. I wasn't about to have him anywhere near the house, near Ruth, near Katie, humming that warble at the table like it was nothing. I picked a grocery store lot on the south side of Lansing, wide open, plenty of cars, plenty of people pushing carts between us if it came to that. He agreed to it without arguing. I told Ruth I had a supplier meeting again. The lie came easier the second time, which bothered me more than the lie itself. He was already parked when I pulled in, leaning against the door of a sedan 2 shades of tan I couldn't have named, a folder tucked under one arm, 5'10" maybe. Same build I carry, same lean through the shoulders, but the face was wrong the second I saw it, rounder through the jaw than mine, a cowlick standing up off his forehead exactly the way it had on that grainy tape, and above his lip, small and pale, the scar. I got out slow. Neither of us said anything for a second. Cartwheels rattled somewhere behind him. A kid was crying near the entrance about something.
"Rowan,"
he said, flat even, like he was greeting himself. "You're Harold."
I am.
He didn't blink saying it.
And you've been living my life for 34 years.
I almost laughed. It came out instead as a breath through my nose, short and hard. That's a hell of a way to open. He set the folder on the hood of his car and opened it without asking, spreading it out like a man laying down a winning hand. School photos, a strip of them stapled together, a boy with that same round face aging up through the grades. A birth certificate, the paper gone soft at the folds. Alexis Finley, listed as mother. An address on it I knew by heart, the split level, the one bathroom, the window unit that dripped onto the sill in summer. That's my house, I said.
It's mine.
I pulled out my wallet, my own license, dug a school photo out of the glove box I'd grabbed on a hunch before I left the house, my own gap-toothed grin at 8 years old, same house behind me in the background, same driveway. He looked at it a long time, didn't flinch. Somebody's photograph is fake, I said. Has to be. Yours or mine.
Mine isn't.
Neither is mine. We stood there with 2 full childhoods spread across the hood of his car, mine in my hand, his under the clip of a manila folder, and neither set of paper had a seam in it anywhere I could find. Same house, same mother's signature, near enough that I couldn't call either one a forgery without calling my own a forgery too. Report cards, a hospital bracelet, laminated, his name printed clean across it. Rowan Finley, not Harold on the bracelet, Rowan.
You're the imposter,
he said.
not me.
I felt something cold work up through my chest. Say that again.
You're the imposter.
Steady. No heat in it at all, which was worse than if he'd shouted it.
I grew up in that house. I had that mother. I've got the paper to prove it, and you can't disprove a single page.
I could have argued the split level right down to the carpet fibers with him for an hour and gotten nowhere, both of us holding proof that canceled the other's proof out clean. So I didn't argue the house. Sable Pond, I said instead. Something changed in his face. Small. Almost nothing. But his eyes stopped moving. Stopped blinking, gone flat and fixed on me like a man listening to something arrive from a long way off.
The dock,
he said, slow, reciting it.
Gray boards, warped at the edges. There's a water stain on the ceiling of the room, shaped like a dog, one ear folded over.
Stop.
You cross the loops underneath. That's how she taught you to tie your shoe, not over, under.
He wasn't looking at me anymore so much as through me.
Don't let them see you counting. She told you that, whispered it, right at your knee.
Stop it.
I know about the tape,
he said, and his voice hadn't changed at all this whole time, hadn't gone up, hadn't cracked, just kept coming in that same flat, sure register.
The dock, the dog-shaped stain. She told you not to let them see you counting.
I didn't answer him. I couldn't. My own memory was coming out of another man's mouth, word for word, the exact whisper I'd never told anybody but Ruth, and he said it without blinking, without a single hitch, like he'd been holding it ready the whole drive over. I grabbed my license and the school photo off the hood so fast the folder slid and half his papers went sliding after it, birth certificate and all, fluttering onto the asphalt between us.
Rowan,
he said, calm, like I'd only forgotten something small. I didn't answer. I got in the car. My hands were shaking bad enough that the key missed the ignition twice before it caught. In the mirror, he hadn't moved, still standing there beside his car with his papers scattered around his feet, watching me back out, watching me straight through the windshield the whole way. I put the lot behind me going faster than the speed bumps wanted to let me, my sister's whisper still sitting in my ears in a stranger's calm, unhurried voice. I got home before Ruth had the dishes put away, and I stood in the kitchen doorway with my keys still in my hand.
You look like you saw a ghost,
she said. Close enough. I told her about the lot, the folder on the hood, the birth certificate with my name on his bracelet. She sat down at the table halfway through it, gripping the edge like she needed it to hold her up. I have to go back to the lake, I said. That's where it splits. That's where the answers are.
No.
She said it fast before I'd even finished.
Rowan, no. Katie is not going anywhere near that water.
I'm not taking her. I'm not taking either of you.
Then what, you go alone?
I go alone. She stood up and came around the table and put both hands flat on my chest, like she was checking I was still solid. "Keep her away from your mother," I said. "Keep her away from Harold if he comes near this house, and that tape stays in the tackle box. Nobody plays it. Not for any reason."
"You're scaring me."
"I know." She didn't fight me on the leaving, not after that. She just held on a second longer than usual before she let go. I left before it was light. 3 hours north with the radio off. Just the tires and my own hands on the wheel, watching the trees close in the closer I got to Houghton Lake. The colony was gone to seed. Half the cottages had trees growing up through their porches. Cottage 14 still had its number screwed to the post, the paint peeled down to bare wood, and past it the dock ran out into water so black and still it looked like something you could fall through and keep falling. The porch boards gave under my weight, soft, half-rotten. Inside it smelled the way the storage unit had smelled, mildew and cold and something underneath that. I found the stairs by feel more than sight. The yellow room was still yellow, barely. The paint had gone gray-green with damp everywhere except a ghost outline where a bed frame used to sit, 2 rectangles side by side. I looked up. The stain was still there, dog-shaped, one ear folded over. I stood in the doorway a long time before I heard her voice behind me.
"I knew you'd come here eventually."
I turned around too fast, heart going hard, and there she was at the top of the stairs in her cardigan like she'd walked in off any ordinary afternoon, hands folded in front of her. "You knew I'd figure it out and you let me anyway."
"I knew when your call started coming."
I pulled the rental agreement out of my jacket, unfolded it rough enough it tore a little at the crease, and held it out toward her like it might do something on its own. "Cottage 14, your name on it, and a shoebox full of pictures with every kid's face scratched out, and a tape with 2 names on it, and a man in a parking lot who knows my sister's whisper better than I do." She looked at the paper. She didn't take it.
"His name is Harold Jacobs,"
she said. "I know his name."
2 families came up here that July, us and the Jacobs. 2 boys, close in age, Martha too."
"What happened to her?" Her mouth worked before anything came out.
"There was a night at the water. The adults were on the porch. We weren't watching close enough, and the lake took one of the children."
"Took?"
"Or he was taken. I've never been sure there's a difference out here."
I felt the floor go strange under me, the same way it had in the kitchen weeks ago.
"We chose a story that would keep the households we had left,"
she said.
"We kept the quiet child and we erased the one the lake took."
"You erased Martha?"
"We scratched her out of every picture because we believed if we refused to say her name it would seal the loss, stop the lake from taking anything more."
"It didn't stop anything. There's a man in Lansing with my birth certificate."
"No."
Her voice cracked on it, the first crack I'd heard in her in years.
"It doesn't let an erased child stay empty. Take one out, and something slides in to fill where they were. That's what Harold is. That's what he's always been."
"Why now? Why is he showing up now after 30-some years?"
"Because the seal is failing."
She looked past me, at the stain on the ceiling, like she couldn't say it looking at my face.
"It held a long time. It isn't holding anymore."
"Katie," I said. "The song. The drawing. She said the exact words Martha whispered to me on that dock, and she's never heard that tape." Alexis's hands came up to her mouth and stayed there a second before she let them drop.
"The dead is reaching for her," she said. "It's looking for a new place to sit, and there's only one thing on this earth that ever opened that seam or closed it."
"What?"
"The water, Rowan," she said. "Only the water."
"Only the water," she'd said. I left her standing at the top of the stairs and went down through the house and out the back, past the porch with its rotten boards, down the slope to the dock. The night had come on full while I was inside. No moon I could find, just the black shape of the water stretching out flat and endless, and the dock running into it like something laid down and forgotten. I walked out onto it anyway. The boards gave under my weight the same way they had 30-some years ago, soft in places, the nails gone loose enough that a plank shifted when I put my foot wrong. I stopped near the end, over water I couldn't see the bottom of, and I stood there and let it happen. "Cross the loops underneath, dummy." Martha's hands were on my shoelace again, quick and sure, the gap in her teeth showing when she looked up to check I was watching. I felt the boards under my bare feet this time, warm from a sun that wasn't in the sky above me anymore, and behind her, running across grass I couldn't see either, a boy in a striped shirt with a button missing at the collar, red high tops with the left lace always coming loose. My shirt, my shoes, not my face. Which one's the quiet one? The quiet one stays. I stood on the dock and heard both memories at once, layered over each other like two radio stations bleeding into the same frequency, and for the first time since any of this started, I understood what I was listening to. The knot was never mine. Martha taught that knot to somebody. She taught it to a boy kneeling in front of her on this dock, and I had felt her hands doing it, and I had felt it like my own hands, like my own knees on the boards, and none of that meant it happened to me. It meant I had been given the space where it happened. A boy went into the water, or was taken by it, and where he had been there was a hole in a family, and something came and sat down in the hole and put on his shirt and his shoes, an answer to his name at the dinner table for 34 years. I am the quiet one. I stayed. I said it out loud, standing on the dock in the dark, just to hear if it would hold. My voice sounded strange to me, flat and small over that much water. Rowan Finley. I'd carried that name my whole life like it belonged to me, and it had never once felt like a coat that didn't fit until right now, standing over the black water where the coat had first been handed to somebody. Katie's crayon scar, her humming. Which one are you? The seam wasn't closed. It had only been holding, the way a scab holds, and something in my daughter had started picking at it. The debt is reaching for her. Mom had said that at the top of the stairs, hands at her mouth, and I hadn't let myself understand it until I was standing where it started. It wants a new place to sit, and it had already tried Katie once, in a crayon drawing, in a warbling tune at the breakfast table, in a handprint too high on a fogged mirror. The water in front of me didn't move. No wind, no current I could see, just black glass stretching out past where the dock ended, and somewhere under it, I understood, the old debt was still open, still waiting on whoever came to close it. I thought about Katie's feet swinging under the kitchen chair. I thought about Ruth's hand flat on my chest, telling me to keep her away from the water. And I was standing on it now, and I was about to break that in the worst way I possibly could. But there was a math to it that I couldn't argue around, no matter how long I stood there trying. Somebody had gone into that gap once already, and a family had gotten to keep going because of it. If I walked back up that hill and got in my car and drove home, the gap would still be open, and it would keep reaching, and next time it wouldn't settle for a drawing or a song. It would take the whole of her. The way it had almost taken the whole of me without me ever knowing my own name wasn't mine. If it takes one of us, it's going to be me, not her. I said that too, out loud, and this time my voice didn't sound strange at all. It sounded like the truest thing I'd said in my whole life, truer than any name I'd ever answered to. I walked to the very end of the dock. The boards there were softest, worn down to gray fiber, the same edge I remembered splintering under bare feet that weren't mine to begin with. I looked down at the water, and it looked back up at me like it had been waiting a long time for somebody to finally understand the offer. Martha's hands were on my shoelace one more time, cinching the double loop tight, the way she'd done it every single day of a summer I never lived through myself. "There," she said. "That's how you hold on." I stepped off the dock into the black water, and the seam closed over me. The water let go of me slow. I broke the surface, gasping, arms flailing for something solid, and my hands found the dock post. Same lake, same black glass, flat now, no ripple to show where I'd gone under. I hauled myself up onto the boards and lay there a long time, water running off me, lungs burning, and the sky above me was just sky. No purple in it. No answer either. I didn't feel different. My hands were my hands. My chest hurt the way a chest hurts after almost drowning, plain and simple. I got up and walked back to the car with lake water squelching in my shoes. I drove home in wet clothes with the heater running, 3 hours of trees going by dark on both sides. The porch light was on when I pulled into the driveway. That steadied me some. I walked up to the front door and I didn't knock. I never knock at my own door. Ruth opened it before I got my hand to the knob, and she stood there in the gap with the hall light behind her. And she looked at me the way you'd look at a man selling something you didn't want. "Can I help you?" I stood on my own front step and she asked me that. "Ruth," I said. My voice cracked on it. "Ruth, it's me."
"I don't know you."
She wasn't scared, not yet, just careful. The door held at a wary, half-open angle.
"Are you looking for somebody?"
"It's Rowan." I said my own name like it was a password that had stopped working. "I live here." Something moved behind her in the hall and Katie came running past her legs, sock feet on the hardwood, and she didn't look at me at all. She ran straight past the open door toward the kitchen, hollering,
"Daddy, is dinner ready?"
A man's voice answered her from somewhere back in the house, low even, warm in a way I'd never once used talking to her.
"Almost, sweetheart. Wash your hands first."
I knew that voice, flat and sure, no hitch in it. The same voice that had told me across a car hood that I was the imposter and he wasn't. Harold's voice, coming out of my kitchen, calling my daughter sweetheart. Ruth was still looking at me, waiting for whatever I was going to say next, and I had nothing. I stepped back off the porch instead. She shut the door soft, not slammed, just closed, like she was finishing a conversation with a salesman who wouldn't take the hint. I stood in the yard and looked at the window. The curtains weren't drawn all the way. I could see into the front room, the shelf where the family photographs sat lined up the way Ruth always kept them, and I made myself walk close enough to see the faces in the frames. Katie's first birthday, the cake smeared on her chin, and the man crouched behind her holding the candle steady, had a round face, a cowlick standing up off his forehead. The wedding photo. Ruth in white, and beside her a man with a scar above his lip I have never in my life had. Every frame on that shelf, every single one, going back years, further back than Harold and I had ever stood in the same room together. My face wasn't in any of them, like the shelf had always held his. I stood at the glass with my clothes still damp and cold against my skin, and I watched. Ruth came into the front room with a dish towel over her shoulder, and Katie followed her in, dropped down cross-legged on the rug the same way she does, and started working at her sneaker. I couldn't hear it through the glass. I didn't need to. She crossed the loops under instead of over, cinched it tight, sat back proud of herself, the way she always does, and looked up at Ruth for the little smile Ruth always gives her for it. No stillness came over her, no going quiet, no forgetting to blink. She just tied her shoe, finished, and moved on to something else, reaching for a toy on the rug, already talking about her day. I stood outside my own house in the dark with my breath fogging the glass a little, the way it had fogged the television screen weeks ago watching a boy in my shirt run across a lawn that wasn't mine to remember, and I understood, finally and completely, which one of us the water had kept. Ruth said something to Katie I couldn't hear, and Katie laughed at it, head tipped back, easy. Neither one of them so much as glanced toward the window. I stayed there anyway. There wasn't anywhere else that made sense to go. I watched my daughter finish her knot and gather up her toy and get pulled in against her mother's side, safe, whole, not reaching for anything she'd lost. Because as far as the house behind that glass was concerned, she had never lost a thing. The porch light burned on above a door that wasn't going to open for me again.